Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back to another episode of ReConnect with Plant Wisdom. It's me, Tigrea Gardenia. Oh my goodness, you are going to enjoy this episode so much, so much. So, Munay is this amazing medicine woman. There is so much I want to tell you about her relationship between ancient wisdom and quantum science and the way that she really thinks about human evolution in a through a lens of cellular reprogramming and how all of this connects into her deep love of the natural world and her relationship with the plants around her and beyond. Also, she has this concept of mycelium that you're going to hear about that I had never heard of in this terms, but it made me think of Star Trek and astromycologists. That was the first thing that came to mind as she started to talk about this. So it really is a fantastic conversation where we touch on subjects such as what does it mean to evolve from a cellular level and what is life and death, or more importantly, how do we untaboo? I don't even know if that's a word, but it's going to be a word. How do we untaboo the word death so that we can have true conversations and really understand who and what we are at a much greater level when we recognize that we're made up of a whole series of lives and deaths. And so, really, she helps us connect deeper into this concept of self responsibility and to help us understand where it is that we want to go as a human being or as human beings, but really as an individual, as a human being. So, there, as you could tell, we had a fantastic conversation. There is so much there. And so let's just really get into it. This is episode 103, Natural Essence of Life and Death. Welcome to Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. I'm your host, Tigria Gardenia, nature-inspired mentor, certified life coach, and the founder of the Naturally Conscious community. For over a decade, I've been known as a world ambassador for plant advocacy, working closely with plants to share their practical wisdom to help you consciously embody the elements of life that nourish your evolution. In this podcast, I delve into ancient and modern knowledge from biology to spirituality about the wondrous ways of plants. Together, we'll explore how ecosystem thinking helps you overcome limiting beliefs, understand the true nature of relationships, and live an authentic, impactful life. Munay, we finally made it. Munay. I've been saying Munay too long, like just saying it in my head, and I was like, it doesn't sound right. And then you corrected me. Munay. Munay is a beautiful name, which I am going to get into afterwards. But before we get there, can you please tell everybody who is Munay?
Oh wow, this is always a powerful question because I'm actually diving into recently into the many I am that I am, and so it's part of walking the journey. But something that is really I really treasure. It's what I offer to the world, which is really the invitation to connect deeper to their essence. So and I do this by helping people understanding what they are so they can navigate better who they are. And to do that, I teach them how to speak the language of energy, which is the language of frequencies. And I found this is really a big shift for people to really understand how the energy works. And so I'm a medicine woman, and what I do as a medicine woman is I weave meaning. And what I do is I help people understand themselves at a cellular level and to identify beyond the story, the code, the information that are stored in our cellular system, and to undo them. And then in the process of finding their own voice, to reinform their system with that new information. So it's really about merging quantum physics with spirituality and weaving meaningful relationship first with themselves and then in the world, in order to able to have like a systemic alignment and that has a system to drive and manifest a little bit the life of a visionary, becoming the visionary of their lives. So this is in essence a little bit um, what I do. Definitely touching mostly the relationship that people have with nature. and the cyclicality that comes with connecting close to nature. So there is a lot of healing that we do related to learning to die every day, to just connect to the circle of life and death. I feel is one of the last, in a way, taboo for people to really connect to um, the sacredness and the natural cyclicality of life. I'm repeating myself, but it's really embedded into the work I do, and to work from the earth mycelium to the celestial mycelium, like how to be that channel, that bridge in which we find our space, like an interconnectivity, a real authentic sense of oneness, where what we do and how we act and how we interact, it affects everything around us. And nature, of course, is theirs to hold, and it also there to take the consequences of how we act and we behave. And we so a lot of my work is to healing the relationship that people have with themselves, in order to feel the belonging, in order to feel the connection with everything, right? And yes.
Beautiful. Well, so when you and I spoke already, I've already taken like 5 notes because of different things that I want to ask you about. Because so there is this whole world of, so I'm just going to highlight some of them and we'll see what we get to. There's this whole world of what it means to be a medicine woman in the modern age, which I think for a lot of people is misunderstood,
Yes.
because you think to be a medicine woman you got to be deep in the jungle and you never come out of the jungle, and all these different pieces. So that's one question I'm going to ask you about. I am definitely going to ask you about the life and death cycles, because this is a big topic. Like you said, it's one of the last, not the last, but probably one of the biggest taboos we have in societies, and one of the ones that causes us probably the most amount of hidden heartache, in the sense that Falco Tarasaco, the spiritual teacher of Damanhur and founder of our community, often he wrote a book called Learning. He wrote an entire series, Learning to Die, Dying to Learn. All of these different aspects, in order to help us really understand that the best way to live a good life is to plan for a great death.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a topic that I have found over and over again with many of my clients and many of my students, is something that doesn't get addressed. It doesn't get discussed. It doesn't get lived. So that's another topic. I'm so going to ask you about astromycology, and the idea of, like you said, that connection from, it's a different way of looking of as above, as below. It's a different way of perspecting it, and it's bringing nature into it. I think when we think of as above, as below, we think of it so much from a human centric perspective, and the way that you just described it really brings the natural world deeper into it.
Yeah.
So those are just three of the big topics that you touched on. So let's start with the medicine woman part, because when you and I had a conversation before this, we got deep into your relationship with plants, with the natural world, and how that has informed your work and life work. Because really, as a medicine woman, it's not something you turn off. It's not an office that you close the door in. So can you walk us through a little bit more, like, what is that relationship with plants, and how did that bring you to this medicine woman path and this visionary path that you've been on?
Yes, definitely. What I can say, I am not. I don't have the classical, as you describe, path in which I spend months in the jungle. I have touched a little bit that connection with that intense type of nature, and some of my awakening, or better said, remembrance. It is born also from those experiences, but a lot of it has been like being, in a way, passed me the words like a modern medicine woman, in the sense that I had to walk my own path of being able to see myself and recognize the sign, the calling really that was coming from the outside, to the point where nature and the invisible and visible world were so loud that the calling was so loud that it was unavoidable for me to stop and look into it and accept and find the courage to recognize that there would have been nobody telling me you're ready, or stamp me, or give me, like, you've been enough with us, now you can walk alone. But it was really about the remembrance. There is something so powerful about being able to remember that you belong to everything. Then everything can be a source of inspiration. I'm not bypassing any teacher that came my way or any important figure, but at a certain point there is this expansive sense of oneness in which I had just to stand my ground and answer the call and see if I wanted to be in service as a medicine woman. And the medicine I serve, it's self-responsibility. So I must take the cup of the medicine first myself. So I must give the cup to the medicine first to myself in order to be able to be an inspiration for others and to guide people to find their own path. And nature is being my mirror, like constantly. There is a way in which when I activated self-responsibility, everything changes. And so everything becomes a mirror if you learn to be observant. And as I have a strong connection with nature, and nature is my primary source of inspiration, I found I could learn with different plants, with different natural elements, how to get to know myself enough to fortify that self-responsibility. Because what they master their essence, right? And the difficulty of being human is that I define ourselves as human as tuners, right? So we have the ability, because of our mobility and our ability to change constantly environment and territory. It's like to tune in with different environment. And so we can lose the essence while doing that, because it's like it's a constant, and that's why I teach what I teach. I teach people what they are in order for them to recognize how to tune in with a different environment while keeping our essence. And so nature, it's the perfect mirror, because they embody their essence. They're grounded, they're connected to the ground, to the earth mycelium as much as the celestial mycelium, as I call. They're part of the web that is becoming more and more obvious, right? And so I have teacher of all kind of size and shapes. I mentioned to you my dear Aloe Vera, which she was like, and she is such a fundamental part of my growing, because she's the one that always puts me in check when I go out in the world and I have to remember to come back and make sure I'm resourced, right? So the aloe vera mirrors back to me if I'm losing all my juiciness, all my minerals, all the things I need in order to not burn out in the world with all my willingness and my visions. So, and she teach me boundaries. She has all these little points, spikes. So there is a lot that we can learn when we have the humbleness of recognizing nature as a teacher and not dominate it, but really learn. It's a really humbling journey to sit down and to observe also the difference. An aloe in a pot is very different than an aloe in the ground. Yeah, because you remove, even if the aloe in the pot has the memory through the seeds, it's a memory that you don't erase just putting the aloe in the pot, but you disconnect her from the ground, and so it has a completely different life than the one in the ground. Or the olive tree, with all his characteristic of contortion, and just like the aloe tree it is my master in a way, because he taught me to listen. And to listen, you need to learn to be present 360, right? Because if you listen just in the front, you might miss the whispers in the back of of yourself. And within, we talk about it, we mentioned it when we talk about it before, the two of us, that there is so many elements, and this is meant to be an inspiration for people. A tree is not just a tree. A tree is the master of interconnectivity. It teaches you how to be present, so rooted and available to the sky, how to have a 360 view of yourself. And then you zoom in, you understand how many beings live within the trees, and the co-creation and collaboration. Like when a storm is coming, the birds comes and moves, and the wind shows something, and the earth, if it's the water is available or is not available. So it teaches you to master yourself through observing and being. And I mean, what's more majestic to me? There is no human in a way, that can compete with such an inspiration. But we have forgot to observe. We have been experiencing flat, what I call flat learning, and we haven't done enough experience on the land that we can be humble into observing that there is something to learn just sitting and observing a tree that resonates with you, right? And then they all, how each of those creature, of each of these element has his own individuality. For me, that's also very inspiring, because not two aloe veras are the same, and then the different species and the different interactivity in between the species. I mean, it's endless inspiration. That's what, it just, there is no, when they ask me who is your teacher, it's just nature. But because I've, I remember one time when I discovered that the olive tree was really a master for me to learn, like I felt this sudden pressure to put my head, really, really like an invisible pressure, putting my head and my ears on the ground. And it was like the world was shaking me and saying, like, are you listening? Are you here to listen and to just get it, or you're gonna just be distracted with the noise? So it was that gesture and that whole body experience made me also bow. It was just like, okay, I get it, I'm here. What can I do? What's the next step? Like, just please, like a kid.
It's amazing when we give ourselves that time. Yesterday, so I have a writing, it's called the Sprouts Writing and Creativity Group. It's a writing group and one that we do different kinds of activities to expand our creativity across multiple mediums, that we meet every single week. And yesterday we did this exercise connected to the plant that's connected to your astrology.
Hmm.
And it was led by one of my leader sprouts in the naturally conscious community. And we did this activity where we connected in with this plant that astrologically speaking should be connected to you. And I happen to have two, which are peace lilies. That was the plant that was connected to my zodiac. Um, and I ended up, before we started, once we kind of had the prompts that we wanted to work on, I went and I sat in front of, you can, if you're watching the video, you're pointing because it's a brand new, very small, in the sense that this plant has only just recently come to live with me. Somebody ended up kind of gifting key to me because, well, let's just say that in where I live, it's not very easy to take care of these plants. So I have a much larger one that lives with me in my bedroom that I have a very strong relationship with. This one, on the other hand, I'm just starting to get the relationship with. And so I went and I sat down in front, and just like you said, this plant had me almost bow down. And as a matter of fact, the story that I wrote all starts with that, because what I felt was this need to like hold on to the pot and then just put my head almost down in like a bowing motion. And like you said, it's, are you listening to me? And I loved it because this plant did not talk to me in words. As a matter of fact, when I came back to my computer to start writing, because our prompt was to write a story based on this, I struggled at the very beginning because I couldn't figure out the words. And that was great. I mean, I love when that happens. So I sat there with, and I just kept writing the word hope over and over again. Because when you get stuck writing, sometimes it's just good to repeat whatever's coming in your head. So it was just hope and hope and hope. And then from there, the story came. But it was this sense of, put your head, all of a sudden, what I could feel, which the story embodied, was almost like if the plant's leaf-like appendages were going into my head and like burying themselves into my hairline and feeling my scalp and like downloading hope so strongly in there. And it was interesting because it was really like a feeling that you could, and that was coming in, and my body was just feeling hope. I couldn't put any other words. There wasn't hope for a specific thing. It was just hope.
Yes.
And it was this
Yeah.
feeling of strength. And I think that that's so important, that we could learn all kinds of details about the plants. Listen to a lot of podcasts, people who know a lot of information about plants, but it's still different than taking that time
Yes.
to sit and allow that plant to reach out to you, to connect to you, to share, and to for you to create that relationship. This isn't about data. This isn't about observation. This isn't about, wow, how cool what this plant does. This is about getting and allowing the plant to enter into you, and you enter into the plant, and having an exchange that happens. Like you said, it's the, let me go in there and let me erase all this humanese conditioning
Yes.
stuff that has happened to you. Let me help you see your essence. And let me help you recognize that you don't have to run away from anything. You don't have to run away from your problems. I don't run away from anything as a plant. I am here, rooted, like you said, vision 360 degrees. I am sensor. I am, tuner. I take all of this and I adapt it and I work on it, but I am always the plant that I am. And
Yeah.
I find that way that you describe it also, that understanding that your essence is there, such a strong point of what happens when we work this closely, and how plant becomes medicine. Yes, there are lots of other descriptions to medicine, which I'm sure we're going to get into, but I'm just saying, like, one essence of how plant becomes medicine is exactly that. It's the medicine of my soul, of helping me reconnect back to what my soul essence is.
Exactly, and they're so generous, because they're curious and they're interactive. I mean, they're constantly, we switch on and off our interactions, but they don't. They're just interconnected constantly, and I found that they're very generous also because as they operate on a different field in a way that they regenerate us because in my work, as working at the cellular level and with my gift to see the field, in a way, I see that, for example, when we spend a lot of time with technology, with the computer working, there is a drainage of a certain type of codes that we absorb that really drains our energy because these type of instruments are not meant to regenerate. But when we connect to the nature realm, they have a completely different imprint, and so they nourish our field, our invisible world, and they help us like rebuild resources in even in a way that we cannot describe with words, but it's just like they remind us our essence. Again, I'm echoing your words. It's just so generous. There is it's so like no and no matter, even if unconsciously you sit in a garden thinking about something else and you're not present with the plant, there is a generosity that is curious and calm, and that is hope, you know back to
Yeah,
hope.
and I think, and I agree. And I think what I've learned, because I try to understand what is the difference, because I know people who spend time in nature, but you could tell by their lives. I'm not judging it from I'm talking about how they present their lives to me, not my assessment of their lives. But you can see that there's still some kind of disconnect. And I keep asking myself, what is there? And I think you just said it. I think it is the difference of, I go out and I do things in nature in the sense of, I go and I hike, or I go with an intention that's like, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to walk 5 miles or 5 kilometers or whatever, and things like that, versus, like you said, being in nature
Yeah.
and letting yourself. I think that's the one requisite, like the one thing that they ask, and can ask, just come here and allow yourself to be. Now, it doesn't matter what that being looks like. You can let it can be sitting, you can be standing, you can be meandering. Just allow yourself to be, and allow us to connect, allow us to be there and be a part of you, and to almost, or I mean, and it can be with your houseplants, like I did, sit down and just put my hands and just say, guide me, or allow me to be in your presence. And I think that does change a lot. I ask myself often, why is it? Because I've been working online, my goodness, since the very beginning. I mean, my entire career has been online, and I've always wondered what changed in me, because at some point it moved from being something that was extremely draining to something that was very fulfilling. And as I go back through my memory of, like, when did it change, I think about how my environment started to change, which is not just houseplants, because that's one piece of it. Definitely I love you all. As I'm looking around and I'm like, I love you all. But I also recognize how much things changed for me when I changed my desk setup. This is even before I started working with plants, to being in front of a window that had a ginormous tree
Yeah.
and I could actually see the grass and I could, see the neighborhood, which was a neighborhood covered in plant life. And how I remember even back then, without any awareness still, but I do remember all the times I sat like holding that grass, like sitting, not just being there, but allowing myself to be in it.
Yeah.
And how often when I would sit working, I would look up to this giant tree, very similar to Gary the silver fir, who's sitting outside my window right now. And I'm now, with hindsight, recognizing how that started to shift my personality and how it started to shift my relationship to the technology around me. Like, no longer was the technology the focus. The technology at that point became a tool
Yes.
that I would use, but I don't know how to describe it, but it was a different connection. And it's interesting, I hadn't really understood that until right now, as you were saying it, that it's because I look at it as very much a tool, and my connection point and my what helps me understand where I want to reach out to is coming from the natural world around me. And I think that really is a different way of working with technology that doesn't allow it to like you said, drain you in that being said, after I teach, I gotta go sit down. But that also in person. Like I'm like, I just want to sit somewhere and just be
Yes,
because I'm
and
exhausted.
every system is different, and we have all kind of different tricks that works for us. But I think, this conversation, it's very inspiring also for the new generation. What does it mean to belong to such a time when technology is so embedded, and then being also one with nature, being inspired by nature, to be able to manage it, to manage
Mhm.
the frequency between those two elements that is still sometimes electrifying, and then learn that there is a self regeneration process that needs to happen if we want to be healthy, and engage with life. So
There is so much we have to talk about. So let's take a quick pause so that I can introduce one of our eco conscious business partners. The first time I connected with a plant and actually received a response, I got chills. It's such an invigorating sensation when you make a breakthrough like that and realize just how connected we are and that we are nature. As a nature inspired mentor myself, I was super excited to stumble upon the Shift Network and its mission to empower a global network of evolutionary change agents. Talk about my kind of movement. There are so many inspiring thought leaders, healers, empaths, and other visionaries all under one roof, each one on an individual and collective mission to help you reawaken and co create a just and prosperous world. Check out the show notes and click on the link to learn more about the Shift Network. Consider enrolling in a course or two. Their programs are the perfect complement to your evolving naturally conscious life. I wanted to get into this conversation relating to then your work with like death and dying.
mhm.
And how did that evolve and how did that connect into everything we're talking about?
Yes. So when I develop my relationship with myself, and the self responsibility that I was trying really to imprint in my system, I developed such a ability in a way to observe myself at the cellular level. And when I was observing myself at the cellular level, I was noticing what a cell that carries a certain amount of information needs to do in order to create space for new perception or new information to come in. And so I have observed that the first step was release. So when a cell, when our cellular system, and so everything we are, gets really full and very, congested or full of information, then to gain more space, it multiplies, right? And but it multiplies with the same information that they are in the original cell, to call it this way. And so I have observed that there was a need to remind my system how to let go in order to conquer enough space to inject new high quality information. So stop me if I'm expressing myself not clearly. So
You got it. I got it. I'm
yeah,
following.
yeah, just because sometimes my language is familiar to me, but not obvious sometimes how I speak. And so by observing this first step of my cellular system, I realized that if I had to be willing to let go in a way forever, on something that it made me survive until that moment, that I had informed my system until that moment. So old beliefs, everything that had nourished me or support me or made me feel safe at a certain level, but there was a request of the system to evolve. And so from that, it was obvious the connection to what nature does. So nature, in the cyclicality of nature, we have a seed that carry its own information. Is planted in the earth, it comes to life, it has a life experience, and out of that life experience, it creates the information that will be in the next seed, right? But to do that, it needs to die. It needs to complete one cycle, complete the full experience of life, and then store the basic to become the plant with the same characteristic again, but then let go of that environment because it will never be the same again, and come and be willing and brave enough from the death, to come in again and re-experience the cycle again. So that parallel, made me feel, aha, this is totally natural. We just haven't been taught exactly how to do it. We have been inspired in many ways that often remain a mental experience, but we haven't really reconnect to the process and to the time that is required to do so. So I mean, the most natural way to let go of something will be not like will be like to let our old belief decompose like nature does, and observe, because within the observation of our belief system decomposing, we will learn something to reinform this new part of ourselves that is being born again. So there is so many layer and so much depth, because it's like zooming in, in the cellular system, and then zooming out, and there is the whole life that performs like that. But that this process reconnecting to the natural way of dying daily. So for example, in my program, there is this first module that is called release, and is like the art of dying every day. So we reconnect with that cyclicality in order for our system to say, to remember, it's not about teaching us, but it's so natural that the system will remember. And then to the strategy and creativity of different individuals, we can put in place practices and tools in order to get familiar with that process. But and then is also expand our life, our perception of life on earth. Because if we imagine ourselves as a seed, it means I have a responsibility and a legacy to live this life with such integrity and willingness and self-responsibility and co-creation in order to imprint my next experience with a high quality frequency and vibration. And it's so, it just made suddenly everything less selfish, right? It just like, if you stretch yourself, and this is part of also of the gift of being a mother, when you have kids, you really started to see again what a seed that you give life to is imprinted with, and how your old self is still a little bit in there, and how to let it go in order for this new being to find their own space. So it's the same, but it's nature does it so effortlessly, not without pain, because nature also has all kind of challenges, but effortlessly. Because why? Because there is a trust that we have forgotten, and trust comes with feeling part of the mycelium. If I can feel part of a system that is bigger than me, that is holding me, that is helping me grow and learn, then I know I can rely on it, and then I don't feel alone, and I feel like I can be my own individual, and yet I am a collective. So how I live now, it leaves data in this mycelium that it informs the space. So all this work is extremely important. Like we are all drop in the ocean, but without drops, the ocean will not exist. So I took a long way to say this was the inspiration to observe myself and say, okay, what is there that is valuable to keep, and what do I have to let go of? How do I let go? I have to be willing to contemplate that there is something new and die. So part of my belief systems, part of something I perceive I don't like of myself today, or is not empowering me or empowering myself and my relationship, I need to be willing to let it go. And this is what excites me about this multidimensional work, that it's so simple and yet it's so sophisticated, right? It's just the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom. There's nothing boring about it. It's so diverse and everything is so with individuality, and yet everything is so correlated. It's like I remember reading this book that I don't recall the name, but it was about this a forest keeper that was observing, how certain species of animal will make more or less babies based on how many acorns the plant will produce. I mean, it's just so obvious, and yet it's not, and people need to be reminded, right? It's just all about remembrance.
Yeah, and I think also when you look at when you observe and allow yourself to sort of re-embody plants in particular, you start to recognize that this word death that we as human beings have given this massive energy to, because we think of it as this singular thing that happens, right? It's this thing that happens at the end of life. And as well as that, it's painful. Like it has, even when we think about other kinds of deaths, it's like the dark night of the soul. That's when this everything has been given this mega energy and this pain point to a certain extent. Where in reality, when you observe a plant, you recognize that death happens on a constant basis. As you said, it's a part of the renewal process. So a bloom, a flower starts to bloom, and then that flower dies off. Right now, talking about aloes, there's two aloe plants in front of me, and one of them has a bloom that died off several months ago, and the plant has yet to fully let go of and release, but the whole bloom has withered and it's dry. And then there's another that was maybe about a month ago when the plant bloomed, and so there is one part of that bloom that's completely dead, but there's a stem that is still alive. And then there's several different leaves that are, dry or dead and such. And so life and death is way more than the single life. There are seeds in here that have gone through their entire cycle and are now like at their final end. And there are lots of pieces of this plant that have died off in order to make space, in order to create new, in order to have different experiences, in order to signal to me something. Like there are so many reasons. And I don't look at this plant or these plants, both of them with their different death parts, and I don't think of them as in pain or having a problem. I look at these as cycles, and as you said, reflections and ways that the plant adapts to the temperature, the weather,
Yes.
the relationship with me. There are so many aspects of this, and how amazing it is. I have an entire module also inside of my ReConnect with the Plant Kingdom course that is all about death and dying, because, like you said, it is such an expansive way of looking at it when you approach it as a plant, that it completely takes away this negative stigma that we've given to the idea of death and dying, and you look at it more as an evolution. I have lots of little deaths throughout my life.
Yes.
I have careers that might die off. I have parts of me that of my thinking of ways that I'm being that might die off. I might even have things like my nails die off or my
Yeah.
hair die off, right? I have all these different physical parts of me as well as metaphysical or spiritual or subtle parts of me that go through multiple cycles. And if instead of trying to avoid the topic or trying to avoid death at all costs, I instead embraced it and looked at it, as you just said, as this my ability to encode this information. So if I finish a job, for example, or a career, and I look at that as a death, and therefore I think of it as what is the seed that I have been creating? What are the skills and characteristics and talents of myself? And I encode those into this seed connected to that work. And I replant that seed in the soil of myself so that when I start a new work, whatever that new career, that new job, especially as multi-passionates who have all these different lives within lives, how much more could I be growing because I'm not throwing away any of my past, but I'm using my past to move into the next phase of my life? There are so many different ways for us to enjoy, experience, and enhance life when we start to embrace death at every level as
Absolutely.
part of that, including the preparation for our next physical life. Like, here at Damaher, we work with reincarnation very closely. We program births in the sense that we help the new soul kind of remember who they are, to have the best characteristics based on the soul that's being incarnated. How do you pick up the best personalities and stuff? But that work starts with the life that you're currently in recognizing and preparing everything that you need to prepare for a really good death. So, for example, we every year spend a month of the year looking at all of our death preparations. We have specific rituals that are done, we have people that work with us, we have relationships that are created, we have documents that we build, and we have exercises throughout our lives for ourselves to encode these things deeper and deeper into our soul structure, that by the time I reincarnate, I have a memory
Yeah,
of
that's
all of that, and I can recall that. And I think that, at least for me, working with the plants, I have an inherent, like, I was born, my brother and I share this in common, with a terrifying fear of death.
mm,
Like, I couldn't even talk about it. And it has been this journey with the plants, this journey also with my community's way of looking at it and being very active in the relationship with death, that has completely transformed my ability to live life so much more fully, because I can embrace this piece. And it's something I wish for everyone. And it starts by observing a plant. I once, with the music of the plants, I spent 2 weeks listening to the bloom of an orchid die. I listened to the music all day long, that this, with this plant music being made by this dying bloom. I listened for changes. I listened for communication. I listened for anything that would help me understand, how does a plant live life and how does the plant live death? Because death is a slow process for plants. It's a dying process. And it changed so much my inherent, my non-mental, but my more, subtle understanding of life and death. That music helped me find peace and calm and evolution and transformation and, like you said, release, and all these different pieces that it took me a long time to conceptualize, to really understand. But I knew that what I was doing was important to transform the way that I look about death.
yes,
And so I feel like this is such, I love that you talk about it as, the cellular level, because also at a cellular level, our cells are constantly dying off.
exactly. It's like,
And go ahead, go
no,
ahead.
no, it's like, it's so obvious, it's just like those barrier that the conditioning and the society, that it's a place of power to separate us from that and not help us see as I call that as, like, it's a regenerative process between two experiences, right? And how beautiful would be to be able to accompany ourselves into the daily let go, but also accompany the community and the people that they have to go to their experiences sooner than us, or by age or by anything, into that door, with the understanding that they're going to regenerate, right? And it's, I think it's such an imprint, like all the beautiful work that you just shared, that you guys do as a community to come to imprint yourself with this and come back to life with certain information. So many souls don't have that chance, and so they have to go through so many layers and perhaps lives of trying to shed this fear that has no need to exist. To a certain extent, it's okay to have a fear of, oh god, I have to remember how to do it and it's coming again. It's like the innocent fear. But to have a mind fear that limits us from relating to such a natural process, I think it's terrible in a way. It's just, it's for me, it's like there was no other way to start to what I do and my participation than this, than with this. Because if we can, from different angle of the world, with different technique, different way, being an inspiration to this natural way to regenerate, to this way to observe it, then then everything else fall into place to a certain extent. It's just like, okay, then if I can let go of the fear and welcome the trust and work on what I am and who I am, then it's charged the field with people that they are so much more alive than what we're experiencing sometimes around us. So I'm with you, and I'm very inspired also from what you share about the community where you are and yourself are so committed to really craft so many experiences around this pillar. It's just where everything starts and everything ends
Right.
and everything starts again, and it's liberating.
I have one dream. Unfortunately, Italian law doesn't allow for this, but when I was just in the United States, one of the things I learned about was that in my home state in Florida, there is a natural cemetery, and a natural cemetery where basically a person is put directly into the earth. It's a nature preserve. It's used, people go and they do hikes in it and such. So it's a place of connection. It's not a closed off place. And you see the burials where people are, they're buried directly into the earth with nothing, nothing that can corrode the earth or anything like that. It's something that in Italy we're not allowed to do. So we unfortunately get cremated, which is not my favorite from an ecological perspective. But then our ashes are put into the sacred woods forest with a nude plant that is planted. So it's part of our ritual to do that. It's our closest step. But I hope that one day we're going to have natural barriers, because going to the third point that I wanted to ask you about, which was your relationship with, mycelium, and the way that you were talking about kind of mycology as being, the earthly mycology as well as the celestial mycology that you talked about, or the celestial mycelium. I think that this is a really good segue, because part of also what happens when you, at least in my experience and the way that I envision it and my relationship with plants has taught me, is that just the same as when a plant dies and you allow that plant to compost, and that compost of what happens in the plant comes back into the soil and nourishes the soil on many levels. I really truly believe that we also as human beings have the opportunity to do that, especially through natural burial. And I feel like the mycelium is in some ways, what ends up picking all of this up, both physically as well as non-physically, and sort of distributing all of that nourishment, again, physical and subtle, out into the environment. And so I do think that also the way that we do this work, this not this dying with a sense of purpose, with an understanding, with a feeling of like, oh, this is exciting. It's a new phase of my life, quote unquote, or my soul's life,
Mhm.
to continue on in this journey. I do think we bring that back into the ground, regardless of whatever way you're buried, because eventually everything breaks down. But I feel like that's what the mycelial is picking up, and that's what we're echoing off. So I do think that all of the fear of people have been having as they die has unfortunately trickled into the earth. And I'm not going to say it's the cause for the things that are happening in the world, especially physically, but I do think that we could also look at our lives, not just enriching ourselves and the people around us in our lives, but also enriching the soil around us and our environment in our death. And that preparing ourselves for this death is a way to connect in to the land itself and the land key self to like expand out across and bring that in. And then going toward what I think I understood from you as you were saying is like, again, that resonance between the physical mycelium that is pulling and is doing a lot of that deconstruction, right? It is the mycelium that is decomposing all of this matter for us. And then that resonance of whatever it is that's in your cellular level that you're bringing into the earth that comes up to the celestial mycelium to form this connection. I think I just put words in your mouth and I don't even know if they're your words at all.
No,
So I would love to hear from you. Like, what is for you this celestial mycelium?
I think, I mean, I can take this in two very different translations in a way, because there are so many levels. But I think how I can present what I see to you now is like, I feel um, there is one field, and yet there are experiences there, and the body experience in a certain time, I mean constantly during life, but at a certain time it splits into what I call the denser matter. And so all that information of our physical body and experiences with it, that goes into what you said, the earth mycelium and the earth. And I call that involution. So it's like all the information that we have had during our lifetime imprinting the soil and the earth with that information. And then there is what I call, what I see in my work is like as the finer energy, which is like, pass me the word, it's a little bit of a copy of that experiences in a finer texture that goes with a different type of energy that I call an evolution. So I see ourselves being this being that have two different type of forces that merge with each other, and they encode actually our DNA. And so when that come, there is a part of the copy of the information, the experience that goes in the earth, and a part of the copy of the experience that goes into the celestial mycelium, creating the information for the next life to come, right? And feeding the web, because I call it the celestial mycelium because it's a web that is wrapped within the invisible part and the visible part, and we are kind of in the middle with all the other being. And we have this, what I call this forgotten organ, that is our energetic placenta. So it's the copy of the placenta that we used to, we have been grown in, but is an energetic field that kind of connects us between these two realms. And it has a specific function, and that's part of what I teach, in a specific way to relate and absorb and distribute frequency for ourselves. So when we die, we have this placenta that kind of release from our body all this information and distribute it into the web of the celestial mycelium, in order for our next life, that calls us in out of many things that I can talk about, but I will open too many doors. But they imprint our next DNA with this information coming in, just like a seed, just like the DNA of a seed. It's more like there is a part of it that becomes like a seed of the universe, a celestial seed with its same information in a copy, in a lighter copy that comes in again. And so that's why for me it's the same things, but they have a different texture. There is the body that let go and imprints the earth, and there is the finer matter, what people call the soul, the energy field. It's the same information that evaporates from that dense matter, and they imprint the celestial mycelium, the invisible world. So that's my translation of what I see with the work I do. And it to me it makes a lot of sense, because then it creates that possibility that allowed us, yes, to feel part of the ground, but to look at life also from above, right? And this organ, it's fundamental because it keeps us equally connected to both, so that we don't become too earthy and too attached to the earth, or too esoteric, too lost into the field of the invisible world. So it's a double experience that happened through involution, so experiences embodied grounding into the ground, and evolution, so it's that force that wants more. Is the the force that wants to have another experience, that wants to evolve. And again, back to nature. Nature is a master at that, because nature is in constant change at a slow pace, in a way, if we measure it with our lifespan. It's like, yeah, that's I mean, I can go on forever, but maybe you can help me see if I was clear enough, or two of them.
No, it was super. It was really interesting. It's one of those things that it again, what we're trying to summarize is our life's work. It's never easy to try to put that into the
No.
format of like, let me explain to you everything that I have learned over all these years of working so closely with plants. Let me bring it into a hour-long snippet.
There you
It's super hard. Which is why, from what I understand, you have different courses. For example, you have an entire program that's called Path of the Visionary. Do you want to quickly tell us about that as we wrap things up?
Yes, I mean, it's the Path of Visionary. It's a program that I created, born from a method that I identified through observing my cellular system, and so helping people understand what they are, to then peel the level, tune in with the level of who they are. And it's about taking self-responsibility, so walking the path from being a seeker, from having the humbleness of a seeker that is looking for what's possible, to become the leader of oneself, and so to walk, really embody self-responsibility and master the changes, so not looking for always external rescue, but to really imprint self-responsibility, switch on the gene of self-responsibility, not just mentally but systemically, to then, back to the olive tree, learn to become the olive tree. Or in the animal kingdom, what I get inspired of is the eagle, to learn to fly above ourselves and have a vision. The eagle flies when it looks at the prey, or wants to land, it flies in circle above. So the inspiration of that animal is like, we need to master ourselves 360 in order to know ourselves so well that we know how to land, or how to join. And so that's the first vision that we have to have. That's why the path of the visionary. And then when we master ourselves, at least with the commitment or really wanted to grow, then we can create meaningful manifestations. And then we become the visionary. That is a little bit, so sometimes people think about a visionary as, I have a big project and I'm linearly walking to it. But for me, the visionary is an attitude of living. How much am I willing to fly above my topic, my subject, my challenge, myself, to learn to be like the olive tree, an organism that is alive, but at least as much as I can, I'm aware of all the parts. And then from there, just imprint life with meaning. So then, and that doesn't matter if I'm selling ice cream or if I'm a teacher, or is like, I do it with meaning. And that's what the program is, divided in 4 steps, to give people the possibility to trigger the system into understanding that this is possible. And you need time. It's like the death that we were talking before. There is this intelligence in the natural slowness of death. And so you need to give people the time to contemplate. Okay, this is what we are: cells, organic placenta, mycelium. There is so many information. Then I give them the experience into the 4th step of this method that I created, which is release, reinform, rejuvenate, and remembrance. So I touch these 4, and there is more on my website, but it's just accompanying a process that, as like that, it needs time. And
I love that.
mm,
I love that. And we need time. We need these programs that are slow. We need, to take that time necessary and to ask for the help to be able to do these things, to not try to, yeah, sure, we can do it alone, but asking for help or working with others and in a group. I mean, we evolve so much faster when we do it that way. So I'm definitely going to be including your website and all your links to be able for everybody to be able to find your programs and to find you.
thank
Munay, this
you.
has been such a great conversation. I really love the topics that we've ended up digging into. Is there any last, are there any last words that you want to share with people?
I think I always feel like I want to encourage people to become their own inspiration. And to do that, perhaps sometimes we need to find inspiration outside. So, connecting to your last words, in a way of, like, there are so many gateways and so many ways. Let's not feel shy about saying that we don't know, we don't remember how to sit with the plants. It feels weird, and just let's connect with people that have that connection and learn from it and be humble enough to be able to not reject or avoid, but to relearn or to remember. And because the result will be fall in love with ourselves more and the nature and the environment and wanted to share ourselves and our gifts. And that's what's and in co-create I mean, what's best, what's better than this is it's yeah, that's what I want to say. Just like keep looking for inspiration, keep looking for mirrors, keep trying to sit with the plants, and it will become more and more normal and familiar because it's in us.
I love it. I love it so, so much. Thank you so much for this conversation. And for everybody listening, if you're feeling called to step beyond the ordinary, to trust yourself more, to tap into that cellular regeneration, to move into new parts of yourself in relation with the natural being that you are and in relation to the plant world and the animal world and everyone else around you, you do not have to do this alone. This is exactly where people like Munay come in, where also my own work comes in, and what we have the Naturally Conscious community for. It's not just a place to talk about plant wisdom, it's where you learn to embody that relationship, to embody all of these principles that we're talking to, where to tune into the frequencies of the natural world and refine your intuition and step more fully into your visionary path. And so if you're ready for deeper guidance, remember that people like us are here to help you. For myself, as a nature inspired mentor and a life coach, I work with all of you who feel that pull towards something greater, but you need help in navigating with it. And the plants already hold the codes for all of this transformation. So together, we'll help you understand the language and apply it in a way that reshapes your life. So if this resonates with you, don't wait. You can, sign up for one of Munay's programs. You can join us in the Naturally Conscious community, or you can book a call with me today. All of the links are in the show notes and description. Your visionary path is waiting. You just have to step into it. So a big thank you to Munay for sharing so graciously with us. And that's it for this episode. Remember to resist the urge to hold back your emerging green brilliance. Bye,
Thank you so
everyone.
much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of ReConnect with Plant Wisdom. To continue these conversations, join us in the Naturally Conscious community, your premier online ecosystem for plant reawakening and accelerated evolution and co-creation with other kin. Here, you'll find expansive discussions, interactive courses, live events, and supportive group programs like the Plant Wisdom Book Club and the Sprouts Writing and Creativity Group. Connect with like-minded individuals collaborating with plants to integrate these insights into life. Intro and outro music by Steve Shuley and Poinsettia from The Singing Life of Plants. That's it for me, Tigrea Gardenia, and my plant collaborators. Until next time, remember, resist the urge to hold back your emerging green brilliance. I'm out. Bye.